Gentlemen, welcome back to the shop. It's been a week, and I know that last week's video kind of sucked. So today, we're going to do something a little bit different. This is a good buddy of mine's 66 C10. As you can see, it's pretty low. Problem is, it's too low, and he's riding on bump stops pretty much all the time. So we're going to notch the frame on this today. First things first, we're going to get it on the lift. Now that the truck is in the air and we got the driver's side rear tire off, we can see kind of the issue we're running into. I can't get a fist between the axle and the frame rail. Now, before we go any further, I need to point out, this is not a work truck. This truck will never pull a trailer in its life. This truck really doesn't even see anything in the bed. So, with that said, we're not going up and over and building a big cradle like we normally would. What we're going to be doing instead is I've got these pieces of box that I cut a while ago because I've known that I was going to be doing this project. I just didn't know when. So, we've got a piece of what was 6x8 rectangular tubing. This is A500 hardened structural steel. It's a 1/4 inch wall, and this is stronger than any part of this frame on this truck. Now, that said, I've cut it just a touch wider than the actual frame is, but it's not as tall as the frame is, and I've just realized that I'm off camera. So, this is gonna come in here, basically right over top of where the bump stop is now. And what that's gonna do is it's gonna allow the axle to travel up like it needs to. Again, this is not a work truck. All of the suspension is handled here at the coil spring and farther up where the trailing arm meets the frame in the front of the truck. The only thing that's going to be possibly affected by what we're doing is the panhard bar, which actually keeps the axle centered side to side under the truck. And even then, I don't think we're going to have an issue because this is stronger than anything on the frame anyways. And we're not going to take it all the way to nothing. Another thing we're going to be doing while we have the truck here is this fuel cell is leaking. And it's leaking from this corner. I don't know exactly where the crack is, but we're going to be pulling this fuel cell, draining it, degassing it, getting it clean, and we're just going to re-weld this whole side and get it to stop leaking for him. So the bracket that holds the bump stop on is pretty well centered to the axle. I think we're going to use that as our jumping off point. One part on the frame that I don't want to get into is there's a mounting plate, a surface plate here that the spring rides on. So basically our notch is going to start right there. I don't want to go any farther forward, and I don't want to weld into that. But we'll weld everything else out. Well, we'll probably wind up welding to that, but I don't want to cut any of that away from the frame. Okay, so slight change of plans. I'm going to go ahead and pull this fuel cell. I've got to work on it anyways, and I'd rather not have a leaking canister of gasoline right next to where I'm going to be working here in a few minutes. So the fuel tank is almost done draining after about 10 or 15 minutes. So I went ahead and I pulled the bolt on the driver's side shock. That is indeed not what is holding the axle up. It's being held by the spring, which is being held by a very rusty, very janky spring perch back here. So I've got my screw jack underneath the axle, keeping it from dropping down. And I'm going to loosen this bolt, which runs through the control arm or trailing arm into the spring clamp. And hopefully it doesn't fly out of there and go crazy. When I tell you this truck right here needs shocks, I ain't kidding you. These are so bad. Tyler, get some shocks, dude. So the tank is out of the truck and drained, but since we're going to be welding on it, we're going to go ahead and degas it. So what I've got is a water hose pumping water into it. I've got all of the ports and valves, everything open, and you'll see that I've got the drains up on an incline. Gasoline's lighter than water. As that thing fills up, I'm just able to scrub more of the walls before anything starts coming out, and the water level just now is getting to where it's running out. So we'll let that run for a little bit. I'll probably go over and tilt that back just a little bit more. And in about, I would say 10 or 15 minutes, we'll turn the water off, get it out, put some cleaner in there, rinse it out really well, and then clean off the outside of the tank so that it will be clean enough to weld and safe to weld. There's a little bit left in there. With the excitement of the gas tank out of the way, while it is outside degassing, we're going to see about pulling this bump stop off of this bracket. First things first, get this bump stop out of the way. And I think what I'm gonna do is cut the flange off of this bracket all the way around, and that'll let me get straight on to the rivets and hopefully cut them and then punch them out the back side. Now that that bracket's out of the way, I can get a little bit better look at what we're doing here and how we're sitting. Problem is the frame kind of bows back at an angle, and I want this thing to sit square to the axle. But what we're going to do is we're going to line the bottom of our notch here is going to be in line with the top of these. That leaves us a good inch and a half of original frame there. So we're going to line up on the front with this plate that I mentioned earlier. I would much rather be using a silver pencil than a scribe for this, but I can't seem to find any, which is about par for the course. Checks out. So there we've got a clearly defined line that we're going to cut out with the plasma cutter now. So it's not straight to the frame clearly, but it will be straight to the axle if that makes sense. So I'm going to clean up this corner to let this sit a little bit nicer there. That side's good. We've got consistent gaps on both sides to weld to. It's just this corner, I got to open it up a little bit, and then we'll start welding this thing in. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to get the jack underneath this axle, and I'm going to raise this axle up and make sure we're in a good line. I'm pretty sure we are. It looks really straight. Actually looks really straight, but I want to make sure that we're going to have enough clearance in the front and in the back of the axle so that this thing can actually travel clear inside of there. You can see with the axle raised up that we're pretty well dead center of it. That is awesome. So we're going to go ahead and weld this side in. There you go. That's one side fully notched. And again, I need to point out two things. One, yes, I'll be cutting the excess off the bottom. And two, this is not a work truck. This truck will never have anything in the bed. This truck will never have a trailer. Nothing is going to be affected by taking this much out of the frame. And frankly, that piece of 1/4 inch A500 structural steel is probably as strong or stronger than the piece that we just cut out. So I'm going to knock my reinforcement plate out, cut the bottoms off, and call this side done. There we go. That's one side notched. Straight in line. Right above center of the axle. Beautiful. And last, but certainly not least, we've got to finish up this tank. This is just a cheap Chinese generic aluminum fuel cell. This seam is split here and all the way down. So we're going to grind this completely out, and we're going to re-weld this whole seam properly. I'm not going to lie to you and say that it's the prettiest weld in the world, but it ain't going to leak, and it's a whole lot better than what was on it. So now, get to put it back in the truck, get some fuel in it, and get this thing down the road. Not the prettiest weld I've ever done, but considering this is what I'm replacing, I think it'll be okay. Y'all ready for a reassembly montage? Well, you're getting one. Okay, guys, let's go. Okay guys, that's gonna be a wrap for this video. What the fuck is going on over here? Okay guys, that's gonna be a wrap for this video. We got the knots knocked out, we got the tank fixed. I'm about to run to the store and grab some fuel, fill this thing up, and send it on its way. Thanks for hanging out. Thanks for watching. If you would, do me a favor, leave a like and a subscribe. It goes a long way. And I'd appreciate all the help I can get, especially if I'm going to keep making videos. I know last week was a pretty crappy video, but hopefully we'll make up for it with this. And, you know, we got a lot of stuff coming. So, thanks for watching, guys. I appreciate it.